Hey there, cats and kittens, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the MonkeyBoy Presents the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss, and today I'm happy to bring you the 12th special edition in the series, Jonah Hex. And this is another really cool character, a bounty hunter from DCU's Wild West. As is customary with the special edition figures, I want to go over the packaging really fast. He features, of course, the Superhero Collection logo in bright red at the top, along with the seal of approval in the bottom right-hand corner. The sides feature some exclusive artwork of Jonah Hex, and so you can compare, here he is next to a regular edition character in the series, so you can see he's not that much larger. Now then, if you know this character, chances are you know him from his most famous appearance on Batman the Animated Series, where he debuted in a flashback, taking on Ra's al Ghul. He later appeared in an episode of the Justice League Unlimited, which was technically a prequel to his appearance on the Batman Animated Series. Years later, he would appear in the live-action Jonah Hex movie portrayed by actor Josh Brolin, which is best left forgotten. After that, he went on to appear in one of the DC Showcase short films, which was on the DVD Batman Under the Red Hood, where he was voiced by the amazing actor Thomas Jane, best known for portraying Punisher from the Marvel Universe, and finally, most recently, was realized on The Batman, the Brave, and the Bold, along with pretty much every other DC character in known existence. For those of you unaware of this Civil War hero turned bounty hunter in the Wild Wild West, well, that's why we have the magazine, which we'll cover first, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about Jonah Hex. And then we'll take a look at the figure itself, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's a really nice figure, not necessarily worth being considered a special edition, but I suppose ultimately that's up to you. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the 12th special edition in the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss, Jonah Hex. First up, the character section. It's here that we learn the legendary Jonah Hex was a relentless, cold-blooded bounty hunter and killer who delivered a specific brand of justice in the Wild West. He also had an extremely difficult and tragic life up until the very day that he died. Jonah was born in 1838 in Virginia to a man named Woodson Hex, who was an alcoholic and who was physically abusive to both his wife and son. His wife eventually left the two behind, and Jonah was forced to grow up with his abusive father. In 1851, Jonah and his father were moving out west to California to try and strike it rich in the gold fields when they were attacked by an Apache tribe. Woodson traded his son to the Apache tribe in exchange for safe passage, promising to return in 6 months, but never did. Jonah became a slave to the tribe, but also learned their ways and learned how to hunt and fight like an Apache. He eventually was given full status as an Apache after saving the chief from a wild puma. Not long after this, he was betrayed by members of the tribe who were jealous of him when they lured him into an opposing tribe known as the Kiowa's camp. Jonah eventually decided he could no longer fight for the Confederacy since he himself was once a slave, but before he could defect to the Union, he was captured and most of his regiment were killed. While being held captive, he was brutally tortured and was branded a traitor since he managed to survive what became known as the Fort Charlotte Massacre. They were to fight to the death using only tomahawks, but Jonah's tomahawk had been rigged to break, so he had to kill this tribal brother using a dagger. By doing this, however, the tribal elders declared that he had broken their sacred laws and was once again branded a traitor, and this time was also branded in the face with a searing hot tomahawk. Though Jonah became one of the most notorious lone bounty hunters in the Wild West, he did on occasion team up with other gunslingers. This included his fellow bounty hunter, the dashing, womanizing gambler with a love for the finer things in life, Batlash, the demonic spirit of vengeance whose host form was a simple bake teller named Lazarus Lane, the fiery El Diablo. We also meet a woman named Tallulah Black, who sought out Jonah Hex not to pay him to kill someone, but to teach her how to kill someone. We also meet a couple of his deadliest rivals, a Virginian plantation owner named Quentin Turnbull, whose son was killed in the Fort Charlotte Massacre, and of course he blamed Jonah for this, and also a Mexican bandit known as El Papagoyo and his gang, who were hired by Turnbull to hunt down and kill Jonah Hex. They actually came very close once, literally burying Jonah Hex alive in an unmarked grave in a cemetery, only for the caretakers of the cemetery to find him a couple days later and nurse him back to health. Later on, Jonah Hex and Tallulah Black became partners in the bounty hunting trade and also became romantically involved. Tallulah, though, soon grew tired of the lifestyle and left Jonah, only to realize months later that she had fallen pregnant. She never told Jonah about the pregnancy, and when she finally did go into labor, the baby was stolen by a crazy midwife who kidnapped her away from Tallulah. Jonah finally discovered the truth, but felt betrayed by Tallulah, and told her that he would save the child, but from then on they were done as friends and lovers. He tracked down the crazy midwife and the child, only to discover that the baby girl that Tallulah had given birth to died shortly after the birth. Surprisingly, Jonah Hex found a second love and actually married her, a young woman from China known as Mei Ling. He swore to give up his bounty hunting, but eventually returned to his ways, even after the couple gave birth to a baby boy named Jason. By 1899, a very aged Jonah Hex had an accidental reunion with his son, when both he and Jason signed up to help take down a team of Mexican outlaws. Finally, in 1904, Jonah Hex, at the age of 66, was gunned down by an outlaw he failed to capture once upon a time, known as George Barrow. George shot him dead while the bounty hunter was cleaning his glasses at a poker table. Next, we look at a few of Jonah Hex's classic stories. First up, Jonah Hex Origins. This graphic novel collects a lot of Jonah Hex's earliest stories to give us his origins. We learn about his abusive father, how he was sold into slavery, how he was tortured by Union soldiers during the Civil War, and was even betrayed by his own Native American tribe, and was branded on the face with the mark of the demon. It also shows how he became a great lawman despite all this and helped tame the Wild West. It's beautifully illustrated, and if you want to get to know Jonah Hex, this is the graphic novel to pick up. Next we have the Jonah Hex Spectacular. This was Jonah Hex's very first special issue and was 68 pages long. 30 pages of which were devoted to a story called The Last Bounty Hunter, which chronicled the last days of Jonah Hex. We learn that he is the last bounty hunter in the Wild West in the year 1904, and that he is being followed by a historian named Michael Wheeler, who wants to learn about some of the bounty hunter's exploits and write them down for future generations. We also see Jonah Hex gunned down and killed in a saloon by the story's end, and we learn that his body was stuffed and mounted and ended up on display in a Western-themed amusement park in New York City. Finally, we look at Jonah Hex, the Six-Gun War. We find Jonah Hex going to war in this story with the plantation owner known as Quentin Turnbull, after Turnbull, who blames Hex for his son's death, hires a Mexican gang to try and kill the bounty hunter. After almost being buried alive, Jonah sets out to take down Turnbull and is joined by a number of his closest allies. It's really action-packed, it's beautifully illustrated, and it also shows that he is a very lonely and tragic character even when he's surrounded by allies and friends. The first page of Jonah's Friends and Foes section features his one-time partner and lover Tallulah Black and the evil plantation owner Quentin Turnbull. And the next couple pages feature his abusive father, Woodson Hex, and his allies, El Diablo, the Starman, and Batlash. Lastly, the original thinking section looks at some of Jonah Hex's fellow heroes from DC's Wild West. We first meet the beautiful bounty hunter Catherine Manser, who fought crime as Cinnamon. We also learn that she is actually one of Hawkgirl's previous lives. The Native American warrior known as Firehair, expert marksman and professional gunslinger Johnny Thunder, the superpowered Native American warrior Super Chief, one of the first Native American sheriffs in the DCU, Powwow Smith, one of the very first costumed female heroes in the DCU who helped fight for America's independence in 1776, Miss Liberty, one of the nation's best frontiersmen, and one of the greatest heroes in the Revolutionary War, Thomas Hawkins, also known as Tomahawk, and his son, Hawk. Cinnamon's partner in bounty hunting and crime fighting, the gunslinger Nighthawk, who is one of Hawkman's previous lives. Indian brave, expert gunslinger, and another one of the first Native American sheriffs in the DCU, Brian Savage, also known as Scalp Hunter. And finally, the twin sheriffs of Rocky City, Walter and Wayne Trigger, also known simply as the Trigger Twins. And here we have Jonah Hex, the 12th special edition in the DC Comics superhero collection by Eaglemoss. And this is another controversial figure for most collectors, I believe. Like Etrigan the Demon before him, Jonah Hex doesn't really qualify as a special edition to me. He is very nice. Were he a regular edition figure in the standard Eaglemoss collection, he would be an absolutely perfect figure, but the fact that they decided to make him a special edition and charge you that extra money for, it just boggles my mind. There is nothing about this figure that means he should have been a special edition. He is really well detailed for what he is, though. Like I said, if he were a regular edition figure, he would be perfect. The colors, the costume, the pose, his accessories, the sculpting is absolutely outstanding, especially his scarred half of his face. The head sculpt's not perfect, but the scarring is very, very nice. All the way down to the base, which is an oversized base, and while yeah, that usually does mean a special edition figure, Deadman was a regular collection figure, and he had an oversized base for his tombstone. Really, I think the only reason they made Jonah Hex here a special edition figure was because at the time when these figures were coming out, the Jonah Hex movie was about to premiere, and I think they wanted to push that. And I think that was a mistake. He's a really nice figure, I just don't think he's worth being called a special edition. I'll talk a little bit more about what I do and don't like here in the next section in a moment. Jonah Hex apparently stands atop the DC logo, which you can just barely see poking out, and the underside of his oversized base features his name and serial number. To give you a sense of size and scale, here he is next to the first issue in the regular edition and his friend and sometime ally, Batman. And a nice big group shot with a few of the other special editions that have been released as a part of the regular Eaglemoss collection. Jonah Hex is a really awesome figure. I would give him an extremely positive rating if he weren't considered special edition. Why they decided to make him a special edition figure in this line really is beyond me, and that is the only major issue I really have with this figure aside from some nitpicks. We'll begin with the good. Pretty much everything, to be totally honest with you. He is an extremely nice figure. Love the pose. The paint is done exquisitely. The sculpt is magnificent. Every little bit of him is sculpted, and the base is fantastic. I've not seen such a detailed base, honestly, since Deadman, who, I might remind you, was a regular edition figure, not a special edition figure. As you can see, like I said, the base of the figure is fantastic. I love the desert feeling with the sand and the rocks. Great textures, lots of molding. You can actually see grains of sand. You can see all of the lines and ridges in the rocks that Jonah's standing atop. The shovel is really cool. It has a nice, deep metallic paint to it, so it looks like it's made of iron or something. Love the chip in the spade of the shovel itself. The handle is also nicely painted, nicely textured. It looks like wood, and I love how it's split at the very top of the handle. His boots are extremely well done, and the chest that he's standing behind, sort of on top of, is fantastic. The skeleton that's kind of holding on to it, like you'll pry this from my cold dead hands, has a great bony color to it, a bony white. The texturing, again, is fantastic. You can see the eye sockets, the teeth, the temples, and the skull. The hand holding onto the chest itself, the pieces of silver, the blocks of silver inside the chest, even the top of the chest has wonderful detailing. You can see the rivets. You can even see the wood grain on the chest and the lock, the latch on the chest. It's all so fantastically detailed. His pants, likewise, they're a nice blue. They look like a fabric, the texturing. They look like they're made of wool or cotton, which would be appropriate for the period. The shadowing, shading, folds, the mold, it's all incredible. Both the belts he's wearing, the bandolier with the bullets and the regular belt, are a nice brown. They look like leather. The gold buckle on the belt, and every bullet in that bandolier has detail and coloration, which is really, really cool. And it's a nice metallic gold. The empty holster is perfect. Again, it looks like a leather. That brown is nicely done. And the upper body is also incredibly sculpted. Love the fact that he's wearing his Confederate uniform, which again has nice texturing. The gray is perfectly done. It looks like wool or cotton. Every button has a gold coloration to it, a nice metallic gold. The stitching up the collar, up the chest, on both the cuffs of the shirt, and all of the wrinkles and folds are nicely shaded, and he just looks absolutely incredible, honestly. The gun in his right hand looks perfect. Again, it's this deep gunmetal. The inside of his hand, you can see the grip, the trigger. It's all really well done. Every finger is there, and he even has a finger on the trigger, which I think is great. And likewise, the hatchet, the tomahawk, I should say, in his left hand. Looks like a wooden handle. Love how the handle is poking up over the blade of the axe, which is exactly as it should be. And the axe itself has a little bit of a metallic fleck to it, so it looks like it's made of some sort of steel or iron or something. Finally, the head is just okay, unfortunately. The rest of him is exceptionally sculpted, and the head is just okay. The normal side of his face, the left side, looks good, actually. It almost looks like Clint Eastwood, which is basically who this character was modeled after. But the right side with the scarring is okay. The jaw looks good, the texturing is great, the coloration with that hot pink is cool, but his eye is not quite right. It should be sunken in a little bit or something. It just bothers me, and bloodshot maybe. Otherwise, really cool. The hair color, the hat itself, again, the Confederate hat with the nice gold tassels on the top of it around the rim of the hat. He looks, overall, very nice. The head sculpt thing for me is just a minor nitpick, honestly. On on to the bad, which is the fact that he's considered special edition. That's the only problem I have with this figure, is the fact that Eaglemoss made him a special edition figure, which was really only to tie in with the movie that was being released around the same time. He is no bigger than the regular editions. He should have been a regular edition. It's not fair to shell out more money for this character just because they labeled him special edition, when honestly I don't think he's too much better than Deadman, who was a regular edition as well. That's the only problem I have with this guy. Finally, the ugly. The things to watch out for most on Jonah are his accessories. The revolver in his right hand is very fragile, easy to bend because it is a thin lead, especially that barrel, very easy to bend, and the tomahawk in his left hand, again, a fragile piece because it is thin, so if he falls, both of those will bend or break. Otherwise, he's a solid lead figure. Overall, I'm really happy with Jonah Hex. I think he's nearly perfect. The only major problem I have with him, like I said, is that they made him special edition. And the only reason they did that, let's be honest, was because they were trying to shamelessly promote the film that was being released around the same time. And that's unfortunate. He could have been a regular edition, and they still could have promoted that movie, which don't waste your time on, by the way. He is, though, beautifully done. If you know the character, you love the character, whether it's from Batman the Animated Series or from the comic books, he is very well represented here. He is, as I said, nearly perfect. But if there are other special editions that you are saving your money for, that you would rather have, get them first, save him for later, because he's just not worth overpaying for. But if you find him at a reasonable price, I can't say he isn't worth getting. I really like him, but he's not necessarily for everyone. And I really hope you've enjoyed my review of the 12th Special Edition Jonah Hex, a really great character. Honestly, one of my favorites in this series. It's just so sad they made him Special Edition. Please stay tuned for a quick teaser trailer of the next figure in the series. Going back to Blackest Night, Brightest Day, another Green Lantern, another favorite, and another female hero, which I wish there were more of, and I always enjoy including. Please stay tuned for that quick teaser. As always, I'm your host, the Monkey Boy, aka Jay to his friends. Thanks for watching.